Republican votes split three ways in Southwest Washington's primary, making way for a Democrat to take an early lead in a congressional race as the incumbent fights for her seat.
My hope is they look at the candidate who is willing to fight for Southwest Washington.
So will the GOP unite behind Jamie Herrera Butler this fall, or will they go blue?
They are tired of the status quo. It's not working for them.
It's going to be a spicy general election.
Here's the story. Hey there, I'm Ashley Korslund. Welcome to The Story. All the ways to get in touch with us are at the bottom of your screen. You can email us at thestory@kgw.com, use the hashtag TheStoryKGW on Twitter, or leave us a voicemail. Our number is 503-226-5090. Well, our big story tonight is Washington's primary race. It's one that's being watched very closely around the country, in part to get a feel for the mood of the Republican Party. 9 people ran for the seat in Congress that represents Southwest Washington. Jamie Herrera Butler has held that seat since 2010, and she's running again. But 2 Republicans put up strong campaigns. Joe Kent and Heidi St. John claimed Herrera Butler betrayed Southwest Washington and Republicans when she voted to impeach former President Donald Trump last year after the January 6th insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. So both Kent and St. John are big Trump supporters. Kent was even endorsed by him. And here are the latest numbers as counties report their updated totals this evening. Democrat Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez has advanced to the general election with 32% of the vote. The Associated Press, in fact, called her as a winner there just about 20 minutes ago. But keep an eye on that important second place position, which has not officially been called yet. Right now, Jamie Herrera Butler has about a 3-point buffer from Joe Kent, who's right behind her. If that holds, Herrera Butler will advance to the general election. Remember, the top 2 candidates will face off in November regardless of political party. Heidi St. John is in 4th place with 15% of the vote. Now, we talked to Democrat Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez last night. She raised far less money than any of the top 3 Republican candidates, but as of tonight, she is leading that race in a district that typically votes Republican. Right now, it's really less about Southwest Washington going blue, though, than it is about the Republicans splitting the vote, because 59% of the votes are going to Republican candidates right now. But Gluesenkamp-Perez says Southwest Washington has a lot of Democrats, and she thinks voters in this region will switch things up come November.
Well, I mean, what a relief to see that voters are showing up. They are not falling for these big money lies that are coming through. They are showing up for election integrity. They are showing up for women's rights. And they are showing up for small business owners working the trades like me. I'm really fortunate that I haven't had to play games with my electorate. I can just be who I am and have a clear message of what we're bringing to the table, which is a real commitment to real family wage jobs, to ensuring women's access to most fundamental rights, some of the most critical things that are being trampled on in this climate.
Incumbent Jamie Herrera Butler says she's optimistic she can hold on to her seat and that she thinks voters will continue supporting her because of her record over the past 12 years in office.
I remain cautiously optimistic. Obviously, we are not done. We ran through the tape, but what appears right now, what I appear to see is that folks are very interested in making sure that whoever represents Southwest Washington is focused here on Southwest Washington, and that's been kind of my mainstay in this district. So very pleased to be looking at the top 2 right now, hoping this holds, and I get to move on to November. I've never walked into these saying I'm confident, because I think the moment you get cocky is the moment voters bring a course correction. But if I get through this, I'm not going to change. I'm not going to be a different person. I've been the same person in the last few races, and that's the same tact I will take. No one will work harder for this district than I will, bar none.
Voter turnout has been really high for this election. Clark County's auditor told us he expects it to top 40%, which is high for a primary and really could signal a shift in attitudes ahead of the midterm election. Here's Republican political strategist Rebecca Tweed.
It's really the first competitive campaign that, Congresswoman Herrera Butler has had. And as a 6th-term incumbent, to be this vulnerable in a race right now is surprising traditionally, but not really surprising when you look at what's happening nationally. And you look at the campaign that, Joe Kent and Heidi St. John ran, they ran far to the right and middle to the right to appeal to those voters. If you had taken out a few of the Republican candidates, I think the breakdown would still be the same of who's leading. But Joe Kent really got a lot of momentum for a candidate taking on an incumbent. And I think that's a really interesting message that, Republicans need to be aware of, especially Republican incumbents, to just kind of see that energy that we were expecting, we thought might happen, weren't sure how candidates would do that were, running that campaign strategy. And he's made a name for himself, and Heidi St. John has as well. For Washington and for CD3 to have such a competitive campaign and to really put an incumbent on notice, that's a message for campaigns going into November in other states, for Republicans to figure out where they're going to position themselves, and for grassroots candidates who are maybe opposed to the Republicans that have moved a little to the right. They're probably more and more energized. So really watching that energy, for strategists like me and campaign folks, that's really a daily movement. So now more than ever, I think what's happening tonight in Washington is really setting the tone that folks need to be paying attention to. And voters are either going to be very protective of the candidates they support, or probably more encouraged and more engaged to try to unseat them in November. November's not very far away. So this energy is going to carry strong. And I really think tonight's results send a message.
Okay, so you might think, now that the primary is over, can we please get a break from all the political ads, the mailers, the phone calls, the text messages? The short answer is no. The general election is only 3 months away now, so you can expect a lot more of those. And we know you are sick of it, many of you are, and we wondered, does it even make a difference in the election? What kind of strategy is it? I asked Rebecca Tweed about that.
Let's talk a little bit about strategy, because while we have been talking, I have gotten at least 2 text messages on the congressional race here in Southwest Washington. They drive me bonkers. I'm getting them all the time, it feels like. Is this an effective strategy to send these spam text messages? I can't recall a time where I had more text messages from candidates than now.
Well, let me just first say none of them are for me or my firm. It really is an effective strategy. And especially when you can vote by mail, right? The majority of voters make their decisions in either the first 36 hours or the last 36 hours. So a number of folks are really sitting there catching that one last ad. They're going back through their voters pamphlet statement. And it can be annoying to be communicated with, but a majority of the time we find that it doesn't really change enough voters' minds if they're annoyed. What they do remember is the candidate's name. Or you get a large percentage of folks that don't get all of those messages, right? Some voters get them because they're on a lot of lists or they vote frequently. Some people get them just because they've contributed before, and so they get text messages for raising money and they give. It's a lot. Believe me, it's a lot. But it really does have an impact. Now, I do think it could be dialed back a little bit. I feel the same way, although I kind of nerd out about getting all of them, and I save them for either to-dos or not to-dos when I run my own campaigns. But yeah, the more voters hear from you, the more likely you are to, be memorable and have an opportunity to send a message.
So it's really that name recognition is what sticks with people, even if they're annoyed. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so get ready for more of that. All right, coming off of last week's heat wave, fire season is now in full swing. Right now, people in Wasco County are being told to leave because of a new fire there. It's called the Miller Dodge Fire, and it's spread to more than 10,000 acres, roughly the size of the city of Corvallis. It started yesterday afternoon. Today, crews are assessing the fire's footprint and whether it's damaged any structures, but they do expect it to grow because of the heat and the low humidity, along with steady winds.
Grass is a fast fuel. It's going to burn quickly, and if it's pushed by wind, it's going to burn quickly. That's why it's problematic.
Seems like they've been happening more and more, way too often.
Well, right now, evacuation areas are changing as the fire moves. You can check KGW.com for the latest news on this fire. All right, you would think that during fire season, you'd want to know if your home is in a vulnerable area. But there's a lot of fallout now from a new map in Oregon showing that risk. Some homeowners, especially in rural parts of Oregon, say this is causing their insurance rates to go way up. But forestry officials say that this map is hopefully to help save lives and property. Here's a quick recap of how we got here. So in 2021, Oregon passed a law to address issues caused by our destructive wildfire seasons. Part of that law led to this. It's a wildfire risk assessment map meant to inform people whether their homes are at high or extreme risk of wildfires, and also whether they need to take additional steps to protect their homes, which could now be a requirement by next spring. Here's the Oregon Department of Forestry explaining what that might look like.
So there should be time for folks to understand their risk and then understand what defensible space will look like. But there are some general best practices for defensible space to make sure that forest debris is cleared from the ground around property for a certain number of feet, limbing trees up from the ground to a certain distance so that that there's space for firefighters to work and for creating fuel breaks to where a home and lives are not in danger. That really is the purpose of defensible space, not necessarily to stop a fire from occurring in that geographical area, but to defend lives and property.
ODF says there are about 80,000 homes or so across Oregon in the high or extreme risk category that may be required to take some of these protective measures, mostly in southern, central, and northeast Oregon and in the Gorge, places where we've seen the most wildfires in the past few years. So in the last couple of weeks, homeowners in those areas have gotten letters about this new wildfire map and what steps they need to take for their own properties. I want to show you that map again because this is the new assessment here saying wildfires pose a serious risk in about half of the state of Oregon. The parts in red indicate extreme risk, like down in Medford or Grants Pass. And many homeowners there are very upset about all of this. Here's why. It's because they say their insurance companies are now raising rates on their homeowners policies or dropping them from coverage altogether. That's a big deal. The Oregon Department of Forestry has held several virtual town halls to hear these concerns, and some of the meetings have gotten heated.
I actually received 3 notices, but I was actually made aware of the map about 3 weeks ago when my renewal came up on one of my properties, and the insurance company, which happens to be Travelers, let me know that they were not going to be renewing because of the designation of extreme wildfire. And I'm like, what are you talking about? That's how I was able to access the map, and I had no recourse, and so I had to shop other insurance companies, and the result is that I was able to get insurance through Safeco because they were the cheapest, but my rate basically doubled. So this insurance issue that people are asking about has already happened. I'm looking at potentially paying thousands of dollars more per year for those 2 lots. So the insurance issue isn't well, we've been notified. I would be more than glad offline to provide the documentation, but this is going to cause a huge issue for property owners, both on the homeowner side as well as the business side. And it's a huge red flag.
Yeah, so some of them say their insurance policies have doubled, even tripled in cost, and they're mad about that. Here's what Democratic State Senator Jeff Golden of Ashland said about that during the town hall meeting.
The insurance issue, which is a real issue, and people have made some important points. And I have some thoughts of some things we might want to do legislatively about that. Basically, someone who does everything they possibly can on their property should be sure to have access to insurance at a reasonable rate. And there might be some things we can do about that. But the insurance companies have told us when we asked them about the impact of this map and this bill, that since the Paradise Fire and even further, they have been developing their own maps. And the kinds of increases in premiums and difficulty some people have securing policies precede 762.
Now, another issue that opponents of this map have, they say this whole thing just came together way too fast and that the risk designations are all over the place. They claim there are too many errors and irregularities with how homes are being categorized as high or extreme risk. And they say it's not fair to the homeowners who are now on the hook for making changes to their properties, with their only recourse being to file an appeal with ODF by mid-September.
We had issued a letter saying the maps are flawed and inaccurate. And that is because I heard that directly from state agencies. And it's something that I was literally repeating what I was told by those that put the maps out. For instance, there's an example of a duplex where half of the duplex is listed as extreme and the other half is not. And where you have properties that have manicured landscaping, flat lands that is all green and is listed as extreme, where across the street you have vegetation that is not irrigated and clearly dry brush and it's not listed as extreme.
Certainly trying to do all of this while there are fires burning actively in the state, taking ODF off of doing that, off of firefighting in order to process appeals makes absolutely no sense. So we would like to see at least a pause in the process. We'd like to see the maps scrapped and started all over again.
Yeah, in fact, a bunch of Republican leaders in Oregon are now asking ODF and the state of Oregon to pause or just stop this whole process, take time to review each geographical site and create a new map. Now, we did reach out to Governor Kate Brown about this whole situation, and a spokesperson said, "We understand that there are concerns with the initial map release, and our office is working closely with ODF to help ensure those concerns are addressed. The agency is taking feedback very seriously and is considering all options moving forward to ensure public engagement, as outlined in law, is thorough and meaningful." So more to come on this. So what kind of wildfire risk are we facing this year? We've had a lot of rain this winter. Moisture, of course, is good for the drought, but that means we have a lot of vegetation, which becomes fuel for fires. Joe Ranieri's here with a look at conditions.
Hey, good evening to you, Ashley. Yeah, we saw just a copious amount of rain going from winter into spring. In fact, looking at the spring, we saw over 16 inches of rain, record rainfall. You could, of course, remember that. We saw a good amount heading into the first couple of weeks of June, and then we really started to dry out. So basically, throughout the west side of the state, we're going to be kind of in the clear in terms of high fire danger. Still going to be in the moderate category heading into the eastern side of the state, and we could easily go from moderate to high over the next couple of days. Big reason why thunderstorms are going to be in the forecast the rest of this afternoon and evening, and that's what we've been picking up here the last couple of hours, really picking up some heavy downpours just east of John Day along Highway 26, and that's going to be the concern heading into this evening. Of course, there's that red flag warning in place until about 9 o'clock tonight throughout the east end of the Columbia River Gorge and into Pendleton and through parts of the Blue Mountains. As we look at the relative humidity levels, it shows you how dry things are. We're about 40% here throughout the valley and the west side of the state. You travel into the Dalles, you're looking at the low to mid 20s. That's a big reason why that red flag warning is in effect tonight, and it's getting down to the teens over in Bend and Redmond, especially in the southeast side of the state near Rome, where you're looking at relative humidity levels tonight of about 17-18%. As we look at the red flag warning, this is going to be in place until this evening at 9 o'clock through parts of the Dalles, Madras along Highway 97 over into central Oregon. The good news is over the next couple of days, things will be relatively quiet in terms of the threat of thunderstorms. But again, our temperatures are going to start to pick up over the next couple of days, and that includes throughout eastern Oregon as well. Meanwhile, throughout the west side of the state, we'll be looking at temperatures in the mid to the upper 90s heading into the weekend. The other concern is not only how dry it is, but how windy it has been as well. Gusts right around 25 to 30 miles per hour. So again, even though we've had a lot of rain going back into the winter and spring, it doesn't matter what you see from one season to the next. It doesn't take too long to dry out, and that's what we have been seeing over the last couple of days. And again, this is that time of year, Ashley, where we start to see some thunderstorms move through from that monsoonal flow from the desert southwest, moving in thunderstorms through our area, especially throughout the eastern side of the state. And again, if that continues, we could go from a moderate to a high risk of wildfires over the next couple of days, and really over the next few weeks, until we really start to see a change in our weather pattern with heavier rain. And again, that doesn't happen until the later part of next month.
Yeah, I know you'll be watching that closely. Joe, thanks. So last night we told you about the squatters living in a home in southeast Portland and the man trying to sell the house because he can't get rid of them. Well, a lot of you had questions like, why can't police just arrest the squatters?
That the police don't want to be in a position where they wrongfully kick someone out of a home.
What an expert says about a stranger's right to move in when the story returns. Hey, welcome back. Keep sending your questions and your comments to the story at kgw.com or give us a call and leave a voicemail at 503-226-5090. Well, you all had a lot to say about last night's story about a Southeast Portland home overrun with squatters. So long story short, if you missed it, a guy left town in January, then came back to find his house in Southeast Portland taken over by squatters who not only locked him out, but the man says they physically attacked him when he asked them to leave. The house is now for sale, and the realtor representing the listing says the homeowner doesn't have the resources to formally evict the squatters, which can be a very long and very expensive process. Okay, let's get to some of your questions about this. So a viewer named Technomaj asked, why is this a civil matter? Is it not trespassing or burglary? Well, good question. We asked attorney Troy Pickard, who specializes in tenant law, for his insight.
I think you could say that the police don't want to be in a position where they wrongfully kick someone out of a home, because that's a big deal. And we have a court system for resolving these issues. And so, again, to give the police the benefit of the doubt, I think if you're the police, you might very well say, listen, there is a process in place for resolving this in court. We're going to let a judge or a jury figure this one out, not on the spur of the moment basis where we're just having to make kind of a hip shot decision about who's right and who's wrong. This is just too big of a deal to do that.
And Gregory asked, if I leave town for a weekend, could my house get taken over by squatters, and what can I do about it? That is a great question, Gregory. So Pickard thinks there's a big distinction between a home that you live in versus a home you've kept vacant for a while.
You might find that the police react differently when you say, hey, I live here. I went to the grocery store, and when I got back, I found a man in my kitchen. As opposed to, I own this house, I don't live there. It's been vacant for half a year, and I show up and these people are living there, right? I think the police are going to find those to be qualitatively two different scenarios.
Interesting. Well, again, we love your questions. Keep them coming because they play a big role in the stories we cover. We'll be right back. Our Hey Help campaign for the next couple of weeks is the KGW School Supply Drive. We are trying to raise enough money and supplies for more than 15,000 kids. And one of the best and easiest ways you can help is to give online. You can do it right now too. It's super easy. Grab your phone, point your camera at this QR code that's on your screen. That'll take you to our website where you can donate. And there's also a list of locations in your area where you can help support. All right, keep sending your questions and your comments to the story at kgw.com. We'll finish the show right after this. Well, thanks so much for watching our show. This is the end. We'll see you later. The news at 6:30 starts now.
This is KGW News at 6:30.
I tried to get us out of there as quick as I could. The amount of rounds they fired was ridiculous, though. That well over 30, 40 rounds probably.
What a story. First at 6:30, the gun violence epidemic in our city.